Do you ever feel like your parent cares more about their image than your well-being? If so, then this video is for you. We're going to dive into the world of narcissistic parents. It's a tough topic to talk about, but it's important to recognize the signs and understand how they can affect us. Simply put, narcissists can greatly affect our mental and emotional well-being. It's not easy to spot these people, as they subtly make us feel unworthy and insecure, even depressed. And when the narcissist happens to be a parent, it's even harder to deal with. That's why it's crucial to recognize the subtle signs of a narcissist so we can prioritize our mental health. So if you have a feeling that something is not quite right with your parent's behavior, stick around because we're going to uncover the truth. To start with, here's a hard truth. One of the first encounters people usually have with narcissism is through their parents. We often hear more about narcissistic fathers in discussions, but the influence of a narcissistic mother can be incredibly profound to a child. Since mothers are often the primary caregivers in many families, it means they interact more with a child. If a mother is narcissistic, the effects of her interaction with her child can be even more significant. This focus on narcissistic mothers comes from the sheer impact they have on their children. Meanwhile, narcissistic fathers often get a pass because they are typically authoritarian and excessively controlling. So, people attribute their narcissistic behavior as just the way they are because they believe that's just how fathers are. In reality, these fathers have crossed the line that separates normal parental behavior and the manifestation of narcissism. Interestingly, narcissists are mostly men, making up about 80%, while women account for the remaining 20%. It's really interesting to see that these days, there are more same-sex parents. And you know what? They can also show narcissistic behavior towards their children. In fact, it's more likely to happen when two men are raising a child together because, as we mentioned earlier, there's a higher chance of men being narcissists. Whether it's the father or the mother who shows narcissistic traits, it can have a big impact. But it's especially challenging if the father is an extremely toxic narcissist who's cruel to the mother and the whole family. His cruelty affects everyone in the family and can make it hard for the mother to fulfill her parenting role. For instance, the relentless mistreatment from the narcissistic father can leave her emotionally battered, making it challenging for her to stand up for her children. So, now let's dive into the telltale signs that indicate a parent is a narcissist. Number 1. They display selfish behavior. This is one of the most telltale signs of a narcissistic parent. Children raised by narcissistic parents often see their parents as difficult, antagonistic, selfish, and emotionally distant. They may also feel like their parents don't understand or validate their emotions, and that their needs were neglected. If you can relate to these sentiments about your parents, there's a possibility that you have a narcissistic parent too. Number 2. They favor one child while treating another as a scapegoat. In narcissistic families, there's often this complex thing going on where one child gets singled out as the scapegoat. The narcissistic parent just finds something they don't like about them, thinks they're not good enough, or maybe even sees them as a threat. And as a result, this poor kid becomes the target of all the blame and criticism. Sadly, the child who is designated by narcissistic parents as the scapegoat often shows different symptoms that are commonly associated with neglect or abuse during their formative years. On the other hand, there's also the golden child. This one is like the favorite because they embody all the values that the narcissistic parent holds dear. So they get all the attention and resources. It's like they hit the sibling jackpot, while the rest of the clan, especially the scapegoat child, gets left in the dust. People might think that the golden child has everything, but the truth is they often feel survivor's guilt when they have narcissistic parents. For instance, they genuinely care about their siblings, so they wonder why they're the only one getting all the attention and favoritism. And at the same time, being the golden child comes with this heavy burden. They feel the guilt and the pressure to meet certain expectations so they can remain the golden child. Otherwise, they'll be knocked off that pedestal. What's more, they can be so untrusting of their narcissistic parent that they do everything to protect their siblings. Number 3. They focus a lot on the child's achievements and image. A narcissistic parent really focuses on their child's achievements and how they are seen by others in the community. They usually favor kids who do well in school, play sports, or have physical qualities that match what they want. Sometimes these parents might even prefer a child who looks a lot like them, Number 4. They make their child feel unwanted. Most people who grew up with narcissistic parents live with the mantra, "I am not enough," repeating over and over in their heads. This is because they were made to feel worthless. That said, most children in this situation only choose between two options. Either they start believing the label and think they're not enough, or they go all out trying to prove their worth to their narcissistic parent. If they decide to own the label, their feelings of worthlessness can intensify, leading to mental health issues. On the other hand, trying to prove your worth to a narcissistic parent can lead you to overcompensate. And in turn, it makes them feel exhausted. What the child doesn't know is that they were made to feel worthless because their narcissistic parents feel the same thing about themselves. The difference is that they're not aware of it. When parents get caught up in narcissism, it usually comes from deep-seated insecurity. In this case, it's their feeling of worthlessness. They might not even realize it, but they end up lashing out at the world because of that feeling of inadequacy deep inside. To try and ease their insecurities, they turn to others for validation. They crave affirmation that they're good enough. That's why they're always trying to show off on social media, seeking likes and appreciation. It's like they're begging for reassurance that they matter. Ironically, they get mad when they don't get that validation. And unfortunately, the people closest to them, often their children, are the ones who usually bear the brunt of their lashing out. By the way, make sure to subscribe if you've learned something new today. So let's say you've figured out their behavioral patterns and you think your parents might be narcissists. It's tough to completely cut them out of your life, right? Well, let's chat about how you can handle them without feeling so frustrated. Once you start recognizing these patterns, you'll see that they happen all the time. And once you're aware of them, you can set more realistic expectations and practice radical acceptance. These are key for effectively managing your relationships with your narcissistic parents. To make sure your interactions with them go smoothly, prepare yourself, but think of it like you're going into a job interview. That is, take a moment to reflect and set some expectations. And remember, there might be some challenges along the way, so be prepared for the unexpected. To know what to do next, it's better to use an example. So let's say you're getting together for the holidays. First off, approach the situation with caution and try not to get too involved with interacting with them. And when your narcissistic parents start with their critical comments, don't let it affect you. Don't even bother defending or explaining yourself. Now here's the thing. Your parents might notice you being quiet and start asking questions like, "What's up? You seem really quiet today." They'll probe, but the best response is to say, "I'm just enjoying listening to what you say. It's been a while since we've seen each other." It's like playing a game, right? Well, that's the only way to make things work when interacting with them. Otherwise, you'll just get dragged back into the mess. Now, once the situation becomes toxic for you, you know it's time to leave the situation. Why? When it comes to dealing with narcissists, especially narcissistic parents, it's important to recognize that changing the situation can be impossible. Although it's possible to shield yourself from further pain, it's important to acknowledge that you can't change them and their narcissistic behaviors. In fact, trying to change them will usually result in more frustration and even disappointment. Not to mention it can even cause further conflict. Ultimately, you can't force them to see things your way or acknowledge the harm they've caused you. It's simply not worth the energy. To be honest, some people are hesitant to cut off their connections with their narcissistic parents, and understandably so. Maybe they really care about their siblings, and what they can't stand is just their narcissistic parents. And perhaps their own kids actually love them as grandparents. And while they're horrible parents, they're really good at being grandparents. So it makes it hard for them to sever ties. But that doesn't mean you need to keep engaging with your narcissistic parents. You can minimize contact and set boundaries for the sake of your own well-being. This could mean only seeing them on special occasions or keeping conversations superficial. You may also find it helpful to seek therapy or join a support group, as it can provide you with a safe space to process your feelings and learn coping mechanisms for dealing with your narcissistic parents. Even better, seek support from trusted friends or family members. Just surround yourself with people who understand your struggles and can offer a listening ear or provide emotional support. Remember, while you may not be able to change them, you have the power to control how you respond and protect yourself from further harm. And if you like this video, then check out these related videos to see more. And make sure to subscribe and leave a comment saying I subscribed, and we will personally reply to your comment.